of The Void.
Hello, viewers, listeners, voidsters, giving that a try, trying it out. Welcome to The Void. We are here. I'm Christina. This is my co-host Josh, and with us in the netherworld of Victoria, which is kind of a netherworld at the moment, is the mighty Sam Dillon of Low, of Hadle Moor, of just downtown Lizard King Avenue. What have been the benefits of being trapped in a cave? You are a lizard as an animal, so I'm hoping you're getting some sun.
The upside is having idle time. The downside is having idle time. So
yes. So and you actually did something with it.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
It's definitely it put a foot up my ass to make sure to be productive as possible.
Yeah.
And it was definitely a novelty for the first lockdown that we had. I got a lot of stuff done, particularly like Hadle Moor writing and new album stuff for Low writing. But once that sort of stuff is finished and it gets to the end of the day, you look around and like, where's the celebration? There's no letting off of steam. It's you're back in facing you inwardly yourself for whatever you've done. We
live in a kettle, basically.
Yeah.
You've actually got to be really, you've got to really manage yourself with this time too. Like, because I just did 2 weeks ISO, and if I was like jumping on, just watching Netflix or something and not managing my day, you get to the end of the day and you feel you've done everything, and you literally need to then like keep yourself constructive. So what you've been, you're a painter, right?
Yes, yeah. So
great.
I've been doing illustration at home, and I do that either as pieces to sell or mostly commissions that clients will email me with, and that's all great. But like it's therapeutic, and you can get lost in many hours of just doing that, and it's a chance for you to, I guess, let the world pass you by while you're creating something.
Yeah.
But you do have to be disciplined with it. Just because it's funner than being a plumber or whatever doesn't mean that you don't have to clock on and do the time and do the work.
100%.
Yeah, definitely.
You may the internet know Sam as a shouty vocalist. He's also a student of fauna. Would you say that?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
I'm definitely an avid nature fan and always have been. But I took it a step further at the start of the year when I decided I wanted to be a zookeeper. So I am now studying to pursue that.
That's awesome.
Sounds very fun and glamorous, but the first initial parts of the courses are not very interesting. I don't think I've ever heard people say the phrase unblock anal glands more than what I have in this particular. It's ridiculous. The amount of times that vet nurses like to squeeze out dogs' paws is ridiculous.
Where do you study that though?
We're just doing it through TAFE. So every state in Australia runs it, and then when you get to the second year of it, it's very competitive. But once you get into a zoo placement, you'll be doing it at somewhere like, say, Taronga Zoo, Adelaide Zoo, Perth Zoo, that sort of stuff.
Yeah, fantastic. That's
really awesome. I feel like this has been a pretty hard time for like musicians collectively, it seems. Like I can't really think of an industry that's harder hit that has less care for it from the higher ups sort of thing. What do you think? Yeah, I mean, it's the kind of the perfect time to kind of upskill and look at other things. What do you think the general consensus has been in the Australian music world?
Look, it's hard because it's going on longer than what I guess a lot of people thought it would.
Yeah. And
there comes that sort of cycle of everyone going, hey, it's not that bad, and yeah, sure, I'll support my friends and I'll buy you new merch, and oh look, they're releasing this and I'll help them out. But if you're unable to get extra work coming in, or the job keeper's running out and that sort of stuff, or you have to move house, or someone gets sick, like there's a lot of traumas and dramas that are coming into people's lives. It's very hard to keep milking the stone of people's care factors for the things that are the arts.
Yeah.
But me and you and everyone else that's in this world of being a creative, it's very offensive to think that you aren't an essential service, because as far as I'm concerned, when you look at like cultures around the world, what's the first thing that rich people buy? They buy art. What's the first thing that people use in a movie to emote emotion? Music. It's just like straight away, everything's centered around art, because the average person isn't very good at it. They can appreciate it, but they don't make it, but they want to consume it just the same as everyone else. So of course it's an essential part. And I think we should be like supported and looked after beyond just I'll go me $2. Like,
it's a really strange state of affairs, and I honestly think the world wouldn't have gotten through any of this without the arts, you know. And what's it like for you, Josh, in film world? Like, what's it like for the film community? And you know,
it's
they have a lot of commonality. Like, we're all lunatics.
Yeah, absolutely.
We don't belong.
Well, I mean, the arts together.
Life.
It's there was particularly in the beginning, it was a sort of ironic kind of twist that our whole thing was to stay home and watch content, watch Netflix, watch films. And yet the Australian government, I mean, specifically to Australia, really, not only had they basically deconstructed our Ministry of the Arts, but
we don't have one, guys. We don't have an arts department. They just...
Yeah. But, you know, I think we have found our feet over the last few months. And it's got quite busy again in certain areas. I know a lot of my friends who are in Melbourne in the commercials world are struggling because they've been locked down, but we have managed to keep other areas of Australia going. And, you know, New Zealand's, we're working very hard here to keep everything going. With COVID. So look, it's a big mess, and it adds a massive amount of stress, but for the most part, I think we're finding our way through it slowly. But it's been tough, but it's tough for everyone. I mean, don't get me wrong, you know.
I hope there's a sea change. I hope that this could be a time where we could look at that. I don't know what it's going to take. I think, you know, it's
a sea change within
the world. Seeing the arts is important. I don't know what it's going to take. It's going to be an interesting one.
Everything's cyclical though, right? Like, I mean, I grew up in, God, I'm going to date myself, but I grew up in the 70s in Adelaide, and, you know, we had Don Dunstan, who was our premier.
Yeah.
And it was an incredibly vibrant artistic culture in Adelaide in the 70s. And all the Fringe Festival and everything they do in Adelaide now still carries on. That's from back then. But I do think everything comes around in cycles. And I mean, you know, we just need, I think things will swing back towards the arts, whether that's next year or in 4 years. I think we will.
We've been talking about this, like going to Europe for the 2021 Summer of Love. Because I think if everyone can touch each other and be close and stuff, it's just going to be like, that makes it sound very tawdry. But what I meant was like just being collectively close. And I think you and your bands, Low and Hadelmore, should be a part of this. There should be frolicking. There should be frolicking.
How's it affected? I mean, so you guys...
You're writing.
Yeah. Oh, I'm lucky I don't have to set much up, do I? I just make sure that I write down lyrics and remember them, and as long as I'm talking to Carl or Nick and Ben, then I'm in the loop with what goes ahead. But it's like you take away the purposeness of some people that are just complete road dogs and that's their livelihood, then that would be a very daunting prospect for a lot of people.
The crew is the whole other thing, I guess. Yeah, that we haven't even talked about. That is their entire environment, is that world. And I really miss it. I didn't realize how much I loved it until it was gone. I don't think I'm alone here. I think I'm not staying home. I'm not piking out on things anymore. That's a definite. But yeah, what kind of stuff are you writing? You're not writing a pandemic themed album.
Oh, look, it was like I'm a product of my environment, so I'm going to write about the things that I am involved with, and stimulated by or annoyed by. But it's not as like say everything to do with a virus or like shutdowns or anything like that at all. It's more just a general scope of stuff. But there's characters and things that I was already looking at and researching before all this hit.
Yeah.
So, and also like the tipping point was stuff with the bushfires as well. Like that's something that's quite dear to me. And yeah, like that was the whole push of me wanting to be able to one day be a zookeeper. Was that's my way of being able to give back in some form, because I would much rather be able to teach positive education to do with the conservation of rare animals in Australia than pour beers in a pub for the rest of my life. So I've made the jump straight away.
Well, it's good to kind of see something that can snowball over time as well. Like I think finding your purpose and stuff and seeing stuff that can really snowball and become bigger. And, as you learn new things, you learn stuff about yourself. And I think working in animals, you would learn all sorts of things. I mean, I think we do learn things from them.
I'm not one of those people that like watching people pretend that their pet bird or their pet dog or whatever is a surrogate human being or a surrogate child. I think that's quite an unhealthy relationship with nature. And that whole thing of I appreciate animals scientifically and in curiosity levels. So I like to study them. I like to observe as much as I can natural behaviours for these animals. And I love the purity of reptiles. They don't need me. I can go away on tour and they're completely fine without me. They're not missing my company in any way. But you can still provide an environment that they can thrive in and breed in and grow old and not have any problems. And also just for them being a pet for you and you being able to release that stigma that they have of being nasty or fearful animals is just not true. So I kind of do a service for just having that and being so passionate about animals that often get overlooked.
Yeah.
Is that the connection with a lot of the song titles on your last two releases definitely have a connection to the animal world? Is that because of your passion for animals in that world?
I think it definitely bleeds into it, but I just love I like the crudeness and frankness of being able to know that human beings are just a spoiled ape. There's not much. Yeah. Sure, we've achieved a lot, but if you want to look at us, we're not equipped to do much at all. We've lost our ability to climb trees. We've lost our ability to get away from big cats and all that stuff. Sure, we can start a fire and that, but at the end of the day, we're a glorified blob of meat. So I love taking it down that level where you're all equal. And I've always enjoyed biology and natural history. So if I had it my way and I could decorate my house the way I'd see fit, it'd pretty much look like something like Hannibal's dining room mixed with part of the British Museum. So I'm very, very ingrained in that world of taxidermetry and kooky shit like that.
It's very goth.
Awesome.
Like,
very goth.
It's very goth.
Sigmonde film clip from the 90s for sure.
Yeah, you've never I think if you are, there's a part of you that will remain goth forever. That's just a side note. It's just true.
There's a pair of new rocks in everyone's heart, slowly gathering dust.
It's true. That's just real. I mean, you started. What was your general stage presence? Because your stage presence these days, you definitely channel the animal. Mm-hmm. May you regale us with a brief lizard face? Is that too much to ask? Could you summon it just briefly from the abyss?
Well, they don't have lips, you see. So all that expression I have, I might think I'm a lizard, but
he's thought about this.
A lizard doesn't really have many emotional kind of expressions. If anything, you might be lucky and one will do this with its hand every now and again.
Well,
that's it.
You're kind of bringing more to it.
It's everything's just as rubbery, scary, the mask as possible. Everything's just like
it brings a lot to it. I think I can segue here. Yesterday, 18 years ago, Songs for the Deaf came out. Queens of the Stone Age breakthrough album. All killer, no filler. Sounds like a bank robbery, sex, drugs. It sounds like an underground swing dance club with Josh Homme as crooner. Nick Oliveri sounds like a human methamphetamine. And I really think I was just listening to it before, and I don't know if you guys agree on this, but it felt like the dawning of a new era that never came, which happens a lot with big albums.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts?
I would agree with that. I definitely thought it was heralding, at least with the Queens, heralding a sound that was like a real. I mean, our album is hard as fuck. It's heavy as fuck, but it sort of never really. That was it, wasn't it? It was a bit like that. Oh, yeah, I
Even for
agree. That's
them,
a much better way of putting it the way you put it, but I do agree. I think so. Yeah.
Well, it had a viciousness to it that the rest of Josh Holmes' output didn't have, but he is the king of writing to his inebriation.
What do you mean?
So he sings and performs with the mind that, can I drink a slab of beer and still play it and still croon? Like, it's very relaxed. Yeah. It's very, like, it oozes. It's very syrupy. And
that's very poetic.
Play on words, that very Dr. Zeus of the desert that he has going with his lyrics. It's always wordplay and everything's a bad pun. And it's bled into the other bands that he produces. So when he did like the AM album with Arctic Monkeys and stuff, you can hear Josh Holmes you can hear the ranginess just coming through the speakers.
He has ranger swagger. He has ranger, whether it was overcompensating, getting teased as a kid, they have a little something above and beyond.
Blowjobs are the best thing in the world.
He's a bad man.
What do bad pizza and bad blowjobs have in common?
What?
They're both pretty good.
He's clearly not let it limit him because he's a flaming redhead guy and he lives in the middle of the desert, so he's clearly not afraid.
It was a moment. It sounded like, I was listening to it, it's almost like Nevermind or like Alice in Chains, and that they just sounded like a whole new era, and they do fit into my whole thing of it has to sound like From Dusk Till Dawn, the Salma Hayek scene. If Salma Hayek could not do her interesting snake dance on a table to it, I do not want to listen to it, and that really does meet the criteria. But what did you say, Dr. Zeus
of the desert?
Yeah.
Well, apparently it's a concept album, so you get in, you hear the radio, and then you drive from LA to, where's he from? Just out of Palm Springs.
Yeah, Joshua
You do the drive, and those radio stations you tune into are places along the way.
Yeah.
Which I had it's great. I don't think that there's not a lot of concept albums in the world these days.
No.
Not enough. There used to be lots in the 70s.
It's hard to keep track of it. Like I actually had, and I'll share this with you, Sam, but I said to Nate from Converge is the most prolific musical listener I think I know. And we've actually put together a playlist of just amazing shit that's come out in the last 12 months. It's actually been an amazing time. It's just harder to delve. Like, I was talking to someone it was 2010. I was talking to the guy from Shadows Fall, and we're talking about how once upon a time you had to have a cool older brother or a friend who'd like guide you through the record shop, or the person in the record shop would be kind of teach you about stuff. Or in my case, I had boyfriends who just lend me 400 CDs and I suddenly became educated. But I think there was this misnomer that when the internet came along, you wouldn't need that anymore, and you 100% still do, maybe more. What are your thoughts? How do you embrace do you embrace new music, or are you one for revisiting the classics at length?
Look, I think it's half and half. Like, I'm a pretty inquisitive person, and I don't like to stagnate with things to do with art and being inspired by things.
Yeah.
So, of course, I listen to my friends' recommendations, and Spotify often does just set up that sort of like cauldron of different avenues that you're going to be able to listen to things. Because if you walk away and you make a sandwich, you come back and it's already, the algorithm's going, you're going to be in a zone that sounds similar but not quite of the things that you've already been listening to.
Totally.
Which can be like a bit of a dilution of what you're interested in. I think the 70s is fantastic. I've been going down a massive binge on things like Supertramp and everything to do with Fleetwood Mac. These are just perfect albums to me, and I love just the way they paint with so many colours every time they write. But then I love really blackened sort of this entombed worship death metal stuff that's been coming out a lot, like bands like Tomb Mold and Snorlax, and there's a lot of cool bands in Queensland at the moment that have been pretty prolific.
Yeah, really? Yeah. We might get you to contribute to this episode's playlist.
Yeah, that'd be fantastic.
I think we should have a moment where we do veer from ultimate 70s pop music straight into Blackened, because I think this is an important thing to note, that most people who listen or who make heavy music have the broadest spectrum, and listeners have the broadest spectrum. There's the real preconceived notion that it's a narrow style of music, when I actually think it's the broadest one, and people have the widest berth for what they're willing to take in. And it's an interesting kind of paradox. That's a word. Would that work in that context? You're a wordsmith.
Oh, like, yeah, that whole everyone being prolific and listening to all different things, that's not really that surprising to me within people that are musicians, because you're already, that's your bread and butter, that's what you do, and you're just out of your cycle, like your stuff going on in your head, you're already thinking on a musical plane about most things in your day. So it's not surprising to me that you listen to a lot of music. It's more depressing and not as surprising either when you know that, say, someone that works in a factory downtown in Footscray, they have still got the same 3 Jimmy Barnes CDs sitting in their CD player, and it has been since their 20s. Now, perhaps that's a psychological profiling of the fact that maybe the last time they cracked a boner and felt good about themselves was when they listened to that Jimmy Barnes CD when they were 17 years old, before life got too hard and the lower back started hurting and married the wrong person and all that kind of deal. That's just like a little, petri dish of what I think certain people go through when they have to just be happy to be content with the one little avenue of what they listen to. That one movie that they play over and over.
Is this what you're saying? It's just
no,
a bad marriage?
Marriage can be a wonderful shackle to a lot of people.
Yeah, I think so too. But a bad one is what, a boring.
Bad relationships and bad communication, for sure.
Getting stuck. I think that's a really interesting point. It's like the theory that all men dress forever, like the best year of their life. Mm-hmm. Like at whatever age men hit the best year of their life, I don't think it's different for girls. I mean, I still dress like I did when I was 17. I'm hardly an adult. So it's not really, that wasn't the best. Anyway, there's not much different. And I would say commercial radio plays a role in reinforcing this, because having worked in commercial rock radio, it's disturbing. And they literally do program by the numbers, which is the strangest thing you've ever witnessed as a music person, because radio people are not music people. They're a strange breed of people who put 2s next to 1s. We better not put a 3 there. That's a bit hard. And I was listening to Songs for the Deaf, which has all of these, the radio interludes, and listening to these songs, that most radio program directors would turn them off after about 3 seconds based on how strong the opener is. And I'm like, that's a really funny little thing. I don't know. What are your thoughts, Josh, on this?
The algorithm is supposed to be 3 minutes and 23 seconds or something. That's the time of where it's always
15 seconds, really.
Yeah, I did a very brief moment in commercial radio when I was trying to get out of the film industry in 2004. I remember sitting through these meetings where they were obsessed with this thing called TSL, time spent listening. And that's, and it's like, to me, it was this magical number that people just make up that basically generated the whole playlist of every commercial station in Sydney.
It's so strange.
And I ran, needless to say, I ran back to film, and that was it for me. One thing I did want to ask, so you touched on talking about the metal bands in Queensland at the moment being quite prolific. What I'm curious about, I haven't been an active member of like a touring sort of scene for a long time, but I do see it over, I know you guys have toured internationally, and I do see it when I go and see bands overseas. What, from your perspective as the lead singer of Low, I mean, what do you see the metal scene in Australia at the moment? Is it healthy? Is it like, are we, and pandemic's not, before the pandemic, say, how's the metal scene looking in Australia?
Very good, like very robust. Like we were very lucky towards the last, say, 6 months leading up towards what had happened with the initial lockdown.
Yeah.
Before pandemic hit, people like Dave Haley and Direct Touring, they were bringing out, and even in Pure Sounds, all these other kind of smaller guys, they were bringing out a full smorgasbord of extreme bands, not just mainstream metal bands, but extreme niche bands, and being profitable almost every, say, 10 days. And that had been going on for close to 12 months. Like, it was fantastic.
Awesome.
There was not, I couldn't remember one weekend where you weren't going to, say, Max Watts or Northcote Social or whatever to see a world-class band with world-class supports. And it was great to know that sometimes it was, a band from Queensland or a band from Adelaide or a band from Sydney or plenty of bands from Melbourne that were showing up, these international players.
Yeah.
Yeah, fantastic.
What is with that? Who do you think is responsible for the whole perpetuating this myth that Australian bands were less than? And there has always been, and I don't know whether, I know, obviously I had a long relationship with Soundwave and I think they did good things, but I don't think they did great things for Australian bands by excluding them from the biggest heavy festival in the country. It's just completely misguided because Australian bands are world class. I just feel like maybe it's less so in Melbourne, but I think it is definitely weird in Sydney sometimes.
I feel that there's that really toxic danger of the Australian thing of tall poppy syndrome.
Yeah.
Or the weird backwards way of looking at things where if you put in effort, you're a tryhard. And I feel like going, how are you ever going to be good at your craft if you're already poo-pooing it before it gets to its fruition? That's absolutely stupid. So to me, how come every band in Australia that goes on stage and plays and then you get them behind a microphone, you ask them who their heroes are. They're always extra people. They're always 11 out of 10 human beings. They're controversial. They're amazing at their performances. They've got their craft down. They're quite businessman-like. They're very slick individuals.
Yeah.
Why don't you let that rub off on you a little bit? Don't be afraid to be professional about your thing, and don't be afraid to say that you are.
Yeah.
Like, there's no points for you thinking that you don't want to put in effort. Like, that's ridiculous. Might as well stay at home then. Like, I'd much prefer to be an extra person, to know what I want to do and have confidence in my craft and the songs that I'm writing and what my band plays with me. Like, I love the creating part of it. I don't just kind of slap it together and hope for the best.
Yeah. Well, it shows. Like Vestigial, like, for example, the last letter, it's an exquisite piece of work. You can see all the stippling on it, like, you can see all the intricacy. Who do you look to? Who do you think the 11 out of 10 people in this country are? I know you guys are counted among that. For people out there in the world, because this is an international program, where should people be looking? Who are the 11 out of 10 artists in this country?
I think people that are genuine, that's an 11 out of 10 person. So people that are confident in their craft, they are not afraid to take risks with their songwriting rather than just by numbers formulas, and that put on a show, that have a bit of mystique, that have a bit of an oomph to their performance. So I love bands like High Tension, Descent, Snorlax, Resin Tomb, all these bands that are popping. Oh, Yulva from Melbourne as well. There's just, of course, Psychroptic, that are, they're the elder statesmen now of the Australian metal scene. But you go see a gig from any of those bands, you're never going to be disappointed. It's fantastic.
It's great. You're right. It was an exciting time, and I guess it will kick back in. America being excluded is going to be hard because I don't know how long that's going to take to change. But we can definitely, we can have a renaissance here, as you've just said. I mean, maybe this is the time for us to really honor.
The thing is too, Sydney was just coming out of that as well. Like, the opening up of the lockdown laws, and I don't think it got a chance to breathe before this happened. But that's going to be exciting when it opens up, and we won't have, we'll have a little bit better setup with the lockdown laws, and not having them anymore. That's got to help.
It's got to help. I'm hopeful.
And we're starting to get a few venues now, a few more venues back, which we didn't have a year or two ago, or 2 years ago, sorry. So I think Sydney's going to find, because I think Sydney's been a little bit of a wasteland for a while. Melbourne traditionally has always been
Yeah.
very vibrant. I mean, back when my bands were touring, Melbourne was always the hub of where we went to, coming out of Adelaide and Sydney and stuff. But yeah, I think post-pandemic, I think Sydney now, and it's back to that cyclic thing. I think Sydney will have a chance to get itself up and running again. I mean, Melbourne's fantastic the way it's just always outside of pandemics. Melbourne's always had scenes and layers on scenes, and people are really receptive to it there. It's fantastic. So have you always lived in Melbourne?
No, I'm a Shire boy from Cronulla Beach.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I wasn't sure. Right. Okay. How long have you been in Melbourne for?
Down about 5 years ago yesterday, actually.
Wow.
Yeah, right.
What are your
Nice.
musings?
Oh, that, you know, it's been a weird one. Mental health's a thing that became a reality in my life. Doing jobs you don't like, but to have to pay the bills, and then realizing it's not so ironclad as that. You can take a risk and follow things that you're passionate about.
That's
And
great.
yeah, and just, you know, failings in relationships, good relationships, being isolated from your family, but also making the time to check in with people.
Yeah.
It's all about communication.
What you and your girlfriend Kira Puru, can I mention this briefly?
Yeah, sure.
You're both very interesting, creative people. She's a really great songwriter. What's it like kind of being with someone else who's creative, and how do you kind of fit into each other? Because you're both really interesting creatives in different ways.
It's very entertaining. She's the funniest human being I know, easily. And it's also, you know, you're on the same plane as making time for your craft, respecting when people have to do the same, being supportive, being able to not take yourself too seriously, and just being good at communicating, I guess. Like, I'm not a perfect person. No relationship is perfect. And it's just making sure that what you are thinking and feeling, that the other person is aware of it. Because if you don't talk about it, well, then they don't have the power within them to be able to deal with that properly, or work out where they're going to spend their time and what's important to them and what's important to you.
It's an art form.
See, I didn't mind the mask bit too much. Like, it was,
I kind of like the mask.
I was loving the fact that I could wear a mask all the time. Like, often I wear it when it's not even necessary, just because I want it on my face. I've always wanted to be like some, you know, disfigured yet sexually attractive, creepy monster. That would be great. Yeah.
You guys must get up to some shit, eh?
Oh, look. You got to pass the
people
time.
are fucking twisted. Let's be real. True. That's what makes life interesting. That's the whole point.
Sure.
Now we have so you've just done, I wanted to talk briefly about the thing you just made that I'm going to buy for all of my tiny people in my life. You did like an A to Z of Australian animals.
Yeah,
Can
that
you
was
tell
my Matto passion project.
Yeah.
I started on pretty much like the first week of lockdown.
That's awesome.
Yeah, nice.
Because my friends, I got the idea from our low bass player, Adrian. He's got quite a few little running around kids, and he and his wife were telling me that they recently had been to one of those sort of educational toy shops, and they have like your growth charts and your art that goes on the wall, and just them saying how lame a lot of these things are. Like, and it's just a bit like, you know, C is for cow, D is for dog, and it's just not very inventive. And I decided I'd fix that. And when I was a little kid, because my parents exposed me to some really cool things to do with the natural world, that's what like fostered my love of animals and dinosaurs. So I wanted to kind of plant the seed in other people's families by introducing them to endangered and animals that they might not usually come across in their day-to-day existences.
Was there a letter you had trouble with?
Yes, X. Australia, for some reason, if you look at like just the common names, there is no animal with a common name that starts with an X in Australia. Really? So I had to cheat and use a scientific name for a
right.
Yeah.
What are some
My friends
animals
were
we
just
would be
saying I should
surprised?
just do a xenomorph and just have that in there.
And just put it in there for yeah.
It's a
Yeah,
wild
okay, cool.
card. It's a meaningful discussion with your child about it not being an actual animal and it being
Yeah.
another thing. That's important.
Yeah.
What are some animals we should know about for the international folks out there? What are some Australian animals that would freak you the hell out?
Well, we've got a whole bunch of animals in Australia that you're not going to find anywhere else. And you'd think that would be grounds for us to care more. But unfortunately, we've also got the highest track record of endangered species and extinct species for a continent our size. So
Really?
it's pretty terrible. Yeah, our list of animals that have gone down the toilet are pretty high compared to...
Why is that?
Well, because we've got a government that's quite happy to facilitate mining industries. So the more bush clearing that we do, and also the fact is a lot of the biodiversity in Australia that's in high numbers occurs on the East Coast. And that's where suitable living is for us. So we're going to bash heads. We're going to be taking over an entire tracts of land that's there for animals that don't occur anywhere else.
Can we fix it?
Yeah, there's a couple of ways. I would say number one is making sure people have a reason to care. So exposing kids to animals through zoos, through educational programs, through media, that kind of thing, in a positive light, where you're shown just how interesting animals can be, then kids all of a sudden develop a consciousness to feeling about it, to have empathy. And that's going to make sure that people, when they do vote, whether or not to keep using fossil fuels, to keep funding that through their supers when they're older, that kind of thing. You don't need to do that. You can always do something and have a bit more space for some animals, or plant some trees in your garden that look after native bees. I'm going off on a bit of a tangent, but that's the kind of thing.
I invited it. But it matters. But it matters. And I think if you care, I mean, I think as a YouTube commenter came to this channel and said, I come here for real news straight from the heart. And if that wasn't real news straight from the heart, I don't know what was. This is some real shit.
I was quite surprised by that. I know that we don't have a great track record, but seeing throughout the bushfires, there seemed to be a real national consciousness about what was going on with the wildlife. And I was overseas working at the time, and a lot of Americans and Canadians were bringing up the devastation to the wildlife and so on, which was passed on by the mainstream media of Australia, but. So people were talking about it and people were thinking about it, but as we all know, that talking about it, thinking about it, and actually doing something about it, unfortunately, sometimes are two separate sides of the same argument. So, but it's good that that's really interesting though. I'd love to hear more about it. It's great.
Yeah.
So you want to know an interesting animal, Christina?
Go on. Just had a thought.
Oh yeah, no, that was a tangent away from which animals we should know about.
Yes.
So I've got an animal in Australia that we definitely should know about, which is pretty cool. It's the Mary River turtle, and it's one of the largest freshwater turtles in the world. Not many people know about it, and as its name suggests, it only lives in the Mary River system in southern Queensland.
Yeah, right.
And it's a highly endangered species. It does quite well in captivity, so there is a fail-safe population. But in the wild, it's basically made up of adults, and there's not many babies that are reaching sexual maturity, so the population is kind of a ticking time bomb. But the cool thing about this is it breathes through its butt. So it has a very primitive kind of gill system made of capillaries and exposed blood vessels in its butt. So it swims around with its butt going whoop, 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 underwater, taking in water that's full of oxygen in these fast-flowing streams, which meant that if you don't have to come up for air, then you can waddle along the bottom of a creek or a river.
Like that?
Just like
that?
that. And
I
not
feel
be
like you've got a total...
to predators.
Sorry, carry on.
Yeah, so nothing's going to eat you if you're in the water. So they don't have to worry about hawks or foxes or anything like that because they're not exposing themselves. They're just underwater with their bums open, crawling around, finding little aquatic insects and crustaceans and carrion. So very cool. They're huge. They're like the size of a couple of footballs. Very big animals.
Wow.
But yeah. So that's an interesting Australian animal that's not found anywhere else.
I think
Yeah,
we're going to
nice.
have to have you come on or record a bunch, not right this second, but maybe this week's animal with Sam. I think
No,
we're
that's
going to
great.
have to, we're going to have to just record a whole bunch, and then each week we'll drop a new animal, because I feel like education is important.
Yeah. Well,
And we're
as long
not-
as you make it entertaining.
Well,
So,
yeah, that's an entrance. Yeah.
mm,
Yeah. That's where I'm at.
yeah. Every wake needs a joke.
It's true. What can musicians around the world learn from Australian fauna in terms of survival?
Well, don't talk out your ass. Breathe through your ass.
On that note, I think this was
Well,
the void.
Can we,
Yeah.
and so what's with Low? You guys said you were writing during the pandemic, and what's next for you guys?
Well, that's $1 million question, isn't it? It's
Yeah.
like obviously the world keeps turning in that, but whether or not we are able to return with some sort of normalness to a touring schedule or
Yeah.
playing at certain venues with no restrictions, that's going to be another thing.
Yeah.
I'm guessing a lot of bands are already contemplating which way to engage going forward with their recordings and the way that they're going to issue out music, like whether that's filming stuff on the fly, whether that's animation rather than performance, who knows? Like there's a lot of options that people can look at. Music will still have its consumers, music will still have its listeners, but it's the live performance, the vitality of that's going to be packaged in different ways for quite a while, I would say.
Yeah, and you guys have a very visual band. I mean, I would put you guys up as having some of the best film clips, not only in the Australian metal scene, but within the Australian music scene.
100%.
Is that where do those videos come from? Because they're fucking great.
Well, we're very lucky that we use what we have. Like it's all a cottage industry with Low, with the ability for all the members to pull their weight by offering something out of their field of work that they do.
Yep.
So Carl does animation. Shapiro's works in his own production company for short films, advertisements, and the film industry. So there's a lot of people out there that get stuck having to do car ads and whatnot, and that might not always be in line with their thing that they wanted to do, like whether it's prosthetics, whether it's horror, whether it's a passion project. So if you give someone that ability to be able to express themselves and believe in something that will allow them to express themselves in that way, well, then that's a great selling point for them to be able to work with us. And we're very, very fortunate that through Adrian and through Carl, we're able to use that stuff to our ability to produce fantastic pieces of art that aren't just film clips.
Yeah. They are 100% art. What kind of, I mean, there's obviously mystery and mystique, but what kind of stories, because you go down some really interesting pathways lyrically. What kind of things are stuck on your mind at the moment in terms of, like, I don't know, you do all sorts of stuff, like you've focused on crimes and like serial killers and like this religious stuff. What kind of stuff are you reading up on and becoming fascinated by at the moment?
Well, unfortunately, I'm a straight white male.
I'm like asking too much.
That like, I've had a very interesting life. I've led many lives, but for me to be a life full of trauma or blamed for the color of my skin, well, then that's not something that I've had to cope with, and that's not me like championing white guilt or anything like that. It's more, I find that we should face up to the fact that the average Caucasian, like modern male or whatever, is part of a global locust sort of swarm. And, it's that thing of, it's not something to be particularly proud of, and you lead by example. You are able to look inward. There's conversations that are happening no one can exist in a vacuum. We're all in it together. So
Totally.
I've been looking at a thing of what that means to be and what happens, and basically not turning a blind eye to stuff.
That's an important thing. And as well, like, the people get so angry about it, and it's like, it's not about guilt. It's about can we just acknowledge it so we can move past it? One of the guys at amazing hardcore festival that they ran on Australia Day called Invasion Fest, which honestly made me fall back in love with hardcore. It was one of the most well done things I've ever seen. Huge lineup of Australian and international bands, great bunch of, a really good gender mix as well. But this guy was Indigenous, and he was talking about how it isn't about that. It isn't, but you don't have to feel guilty, but just acknowledge this happened so we can move forward and make sure we don't do it again. And how can we rectify this? And how can we take steps that are bold steps towards a better place? Like, I don't understand. We should be teaching Indigenous culture in school in a way bigger way. We should learn I don't know whether we're capable of learning the language, but I should know more about the land we live on. I've often thought it would change a lot if you actually expose the Renaissance level of artistic prowess that is contained within Australian Indigenous culture. Like, sorry, I just got really wound up, but that's something I'm really passionate about. I think, I come from a culturalist, I'm an Anglo-Celtic criminal. Like, white supremacy is the biggest fucking joke in the history of time. Like, it's not a joke, it's horrifying, but I don't know. Sorry, I just rambled, but it's just, I just want to do better. It's not even just men, It's not even, I've got my own, white women are a problem. Karen, I mean, I don't think I align with that, but at least it's finally got a name, troubling white women. Anyway.
Now we want to do we want to do degrees of heaviness?
Yes.
Because we keep forgetting to do it, right?
We did it just then. You remembered just then. So we will finish off.
What's a degree of heaviness?
Okay, well, I'm going to cut away to a brief thing. I'm going to cut away to a montage.
You can pick one song or a variety of songs, but generally it'll be one song. Heaviest song for you. It doesn't have to be, it's not necessarily a metal song. We often discuss how you can pick a London Grammar song that's heavy as shit with lyrics, or anything. It can be also, like, I'm a huge Ministry fan, and I listen to some of their stuff, and or Nine Inch Nails, and it's heavy as fuck. So we just want to know what your degrees of heaviness, and the idea is we'll build up a library over the coming shows that will all be different, totally different songs. So you don't have to put too much thought into it. Just for you, like, So
the heaviest song I ever listened to, I was like, well, it's not like bottom end crazy Swedish death metal stuff from the 90s, but the band Admiral Angry, they're no longer in existence. Their main songwriter passed away, but they released a song called Sex with a Stranger, and I challenge anyone to anticipate just how heavy that slow tempo song really is. It's ridiculous.
We will check it out. I'm not familiar.
Yeah, we will.
I want to learn a new thing. I want to embrace heaviness. I'd like you to finish with, how did you describe Al Jorgensen of Ministry? Yes. We'll finish on that.
Yeah, he's definitely like a seedy Jesus hobo, but he's very smart. I would say he's become a bit more addled and just he's kind of like he embodies the worst of America while reaping the benefits of a worse America.
And the greatest in terms of the dirtiest, most. I think you said after you listen to Ministry, you feel like you need to take a bath. Yeah. Well, I fell in love with Ministry as a teenager because it's the embodiment of music your parents would hate. No parent in the history of time goes, can you please turn up New World Order? Can you please turn up, like, Jesus Built My Hot Rod? It's just not a thing.
I think it was 1990, $4.95, and it was the big day out that we were talking about, Christine, with Tony, Silverchair Ministry, who else? Doug Hole, Rage Against the Machine, The Cult. And I just moved up from Sydney and we were living with a girl who was very good to let both of us, me and Sam, my best friend at the time, stay in the apartment. During the time we were staying there in like the first 3-4 weeks, she got this boyfriend who was a waiter at the local restaurant. We didn't really like him that much. So every day when she wasn't there and we were home, we would play Psalm 69, anything from that album, New World Order, Just One Fix, and play it as loud as we could. And because he wasn't paying rent, he had nothing to. So that's my ministry.
That's
It's
the
like,
degree of
drive
happiness.
Drive them out. Love it. I was playing that the other day. It's still.
It holds up.
Still
And I'd just
amazing.
like to say, I would really like to get Al from Ministry on this program. So I just want to say, Al, we say all of this with love.
Oh
I
yeah,
mean it.
Filth Pig is one of the best albums ever written.
The
I
greatest.
always
Yeah.
like-
I
You-
love Filth Pig, and I feel that was kind of not really. Yeah, I love it. Like I love the Dylan Lay Lady Lay. Like I love their version of
Yeah.
that as well. And is
Yeah.
it Reload, that first song?
Yep.
The fucking
Yeah,
crank.
Scarecrow, Filth Pig,
Yeah.
Crumbs. Yeah,
Yeah.
and the
Amazing.
Game Show, fantastic.
Yeah.
All those songs are flawless in my opinion, for sure.
No, I agree. It's
What a
fantastic.
magical time to be alive, guys. I mean, it's a troubled time, but there's still a lot of good things happening.
Mm.
Well, I can't wait to see Low again. So,
Yes.
when this pandemic fucks off,
Mm.
Don't you
And,
lose
you guys
faith. You're
are
coming
in.
back. Shut up.
Yeah.
You're coming back. This isn't optional. I'm shouting. I'm sorry.
we need it. We need it.
Yeah, you guys are one of the greatest live bands I've ever seen. I think.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
I'm going to put some of that in this show. I'm just going to randomly cut away to Low because it's great. So there. On that note, thank you, Sam, for joining us in The Void. I'm Christina. That's Josh. This is the show. Good day to you.
Thanks,
Bye,
Sam.
guys.
Thank you very much. Fantastic.
Thank you, guys.
That was a great show. We made a thing.
Yeah.
People are going to watch it.
Good.
They'll enjoy it.
Hooray!
Yay.
Hey.
Well,
Well, good luck with the rest of lockdown, dude.
don't touch
Yeah.
that dial.
It's at least it's sunny now. Like the grips of winter have kind of gone now.
Yeah.
The
But it's
claws.
just that thing of all you do is just sort of sit in a sunny like sit in your front porch or sit out the back, and that's all you can really
that's
do.
not- That's what I mean, because we're still locked down here in Auckland. And I'm just going around to a Canadian guy that I work with. We're going to sit on his balcony. And that's about as fucking social as I've been the last 3
Yeah.
weeks.
So you're just
Yeah.
basically being a lizard, essentially.
Pretty much.
That's about it. Yeah.
Yeah. And like you just violently eat packets of jam biscuits and shit now.
Oh my God.
You're just like,
I could go
"What's
a
the
jam
point?"
biscuit.
Nah.
I could go a jam biscuit right now. I bought an ice
I'd-
cream maker, so I'm going to get into that.
Ice
enthusiastically.
cream maker.
It's fucking great. It's got like a little frozen, a tub with a frozen element.
Yeah.
So you just
I had 4 mini
freezes
flakes
it.
before this interview.
Or mini flakes.
Goes well with the red wine. It's like,
Chocolate dandruff. Flakes are chocolate dandruff.
Yeah, that's right.
I have
love-
not
and that's
eaten
why I
a
like 12 when 12s came out, because I wrapped them up
Yeah.
properly.
They should
Yeah.
vegan that shit. They should
Yeah.
vegan everything. Anyway,
Yeah. All right.
don't stop believing. Thanks, Sam.
Thanks, guys.
We're gonna go. Thank you so much. We're gonna go. I'm
Yeah,
gonna
that
go put
was
this
awesome.
out now.
Thanks, man.
This is an experience of the void.